Okay, so now we're going to use those basic shapes and forms to just trace over these realistic images, to train your mind to see like an artist and break things down and not look at them in form of any details or realism yet. So I'm just going to zoom in to this elephant here, and I'm going to go for the biggest shape that I see first. So I'm going to take my pen and I'm going to just trace over this giant oval that makes up the body. And then I'm going to start picking out the other bigger shapes that I see, even if they overlap. For the legs, we're going to create a bunch of cylinders here that overlap and they break at the joints. Very important when you go to refine it later so it looks a little bit more realistic. Trapezoid, it's a little too big there. If I were sketching this in my sketchbook and not on top of this image, it would be something loose like this, not that perfect one line. So again, it's going to look a little robotic to start with all these geometric shapes, and that's okay. We just want to train our eye to start seeing these, to break down the right angles, the right proportions in relationship to each other. Draw these little tusks in there for the trunk. We'll break it down into two little cylinders or rectangles there. So when I turn this image off, you can see that we have this very robotic geometric outline or contour of our elephant. So when I start to refine it, creating the new layer, I can come in and start erasing those lines that are kind of confusing, that you no longer want to see. And then you would come in with that next layer, just going to change my color for now, and start refining those shapes. So you would come in and kind of play with the angles and a little bit more of that organic structure. You would start to smooth these out and then start to erase all those lines that you no longer want to see. We don't want to see any of these actual joints anymore, but when you start to refine it, it will smooth out all of those harsh edges and start to look a little bit more realistic. After we're done refining everything, then you can go in and start building up all of those details and the value once you actually are happy with the shape, with the proportion, etc. Okay, so let's move on to this butterfly. If I were just sketching this in my sketchbook, I am going to break this down into basic shapes, starting with this largest one here. This little petal-like shape overlaps that triangle. So I'm going to come here. Looks like it comes down a little bit, and then I'm paying attention to this angle as well. When I go in to draw the next wing, I'm paying attention to where it starts on the one I've previously drawn. We're going to come here. It looks like it's a little bit lower in where it ends. And then this one starts about here. It ends on the edge of this one. Again, it's very sketch-like. It's not perfect. I'm not trying to get any details in. Just main proportions, angles, shapes, etc. Okay. So coming in here, I can see that this one is taller. So I'm going to take this wing up a little bit. I'm going to leave the line that I already drew just to make sure I am drawing it a little bit taller. And then I can see this angle is better and that relationship is better. And then I would go in and erase this line that I no longer want to see. And then I could start to refine all of these and create more texture on the edges and start building in all of those other inner details and shapes once I like the proportions of the main structure of the butterfly. Okay, moving on. Let's just go ahead and turn these guys off. All right. So if I'm focused on this car here, it is already very geometric. If I am drawing directly on top of it, I'm going to keep it in this complementary color. You can see I'm going to start from these main basic shapes. So I'm going to start larger first and then break down those bigger shapes. So here I would break it down from the whole back side of this truck. And then let's go here and here. And then I would break this in two. Then I'm going for the next biggest thing that I see. I'm going to put this window in place. I would put this one here. I would actually probably go ahead and divide this whole section out. I'm going to start dividing this section into multiple rectangles. So many rectangles. This shadow, this highlight, this bigger section, this darker shadow. Maybe just put this line here. Go ahead and put this license plate over this little trapezoid shape that I see there. I could sketch in the lights just for placement for now. Let's go ahead and sketch the bumper. And then I could start putting in these wheels. Can't really see the defining line there. Come all the way up. We know that this is going to overlap, so we really are just kind of paying attention to angles here. But we know that this is more of an oval and not a circle because it's going into the distance. Even though we know it's a circle, it looks more like an oval here. So you're just tracing these things directly on top. This is exactly probably the pace or how quickly I would be doing it if I were just doing it in my sketchbook and not directly over the image either. So if we go ahead and turn that background image off, you can see that we have a very generic layout. I'm going to go ahead and take my eraser and erase those lines that should no longer be there, that are kind of confusing. And I would block this out the same way in my sketchbook and start shifting things around, making sure I'm drawing so light until I get it right, and then putting in more and more details. All of those little things on the lights, just putting in the frames, if I'm happy with the overall structure. So moving on to part 3. We are going to jump into things that are a little bit harder, a little bit more organic.